I guess we should do a brief introduction. I should say that I met you, Tom. This is Tom Hackett, who's going to introduce himself in a second, who we met on a LinkedIn group. And I just want to preface the introduction by saying one thing, which is that I'm always interested in interesting people. And for me, probably the most interesting thing in life is interesting people. Sure. And I saw your post on LinkedIn and what you did, and I didn't even think. I just immediately reached out and connected with you. I thought, I have to talk to this guy. This is going to be a really great conversation. And you responded very quickly. Thank you. And so tell people what it is that your organization does and why it piqued my interest so quickly.
Sure. Well, you know, specifically as it relates to coffee, I build homes for coffee workers. And I got introduced to that through a series of events. I've been involved in Honduras, building homes for the poor for quite some time now. And I was asked by a local guy to go up into the mountains where he was doing some work among Linka Indians, like whatever, you know. And this guy also ended up getting me into Cuba and other places where build the homes in Cuba and whatever, and which is all fun, you know. And so I finally went with him one time up into the highlands to see his project among these Linka Indians, and through a series of events discovered that these were the people that do the coffee work, the coffee farming, and in the fincas, and they're really poor. I mean, they have a really interesting culture. They live very simply. Their income is very low, and I'm just a projects guy. You know, if I see a problem, I want to get involved and help fixing a problem, you know. And so I started asking questions about and meeting people like finca owners and getting introduced around, getting to understand and know the environment that these Linka Indians live in, work in, that kind of thing. And so all of a sudden, this whole world of coffee opened up to me, you know, that I didn't know, you know.
When was this time?
I don't find anything like that intimidating because I've spent the last 35 years, you know, in environments that I didn't really, wasn't super familiar with, you know.
And when was this?
Oh, probably 5 years ago. I'm really bad with time, you know.
Yeah, I totally understand.
So, you know, like other things in my life that I didn't know how to do, I just like, well, let's just do it, you know, and see what happens. And so through a series of events of meeting these some wonderful, amazing people, these finca owners that I got to know. One guy, you know, has an organic farm in Marcala that his great-grandfather over 100 years ago went there from Lebanon, you know, and started a coffee farm. And now he's third-generation organic farmer. Amazing guy, you know, just cool guy. And he didn't have to give us the time of day, but this guy took us in, you know, stayed at his hacienda, and we built this relationship, and now we're building homes together. And so he became your partner? Well, he's I guess in the network, you know, partner. Sure, yeah, you know, we're it's all volunteers, you know. So yeah, partners, great.
You're
all
partners.
That's a good word. But dear friend now, and it turns out that this guy is this renowned speaker teaching people organic farming throughout Latin America. And he's a historian and a farmer, and his name is Montgomery Milhelm. And anyway, I got tons of pictures and all that. Anyway, I get to know all these people, and I'm like, look, you know, this is what I do on the island of Roatan. Roatan is like what Hawaii is to the United States. It's their island state, right?
Right.
And I built over 130 homes or something on the island of Roatan. I'm still building them there. And I said, this is what I do on Roatan, but I think I could do it here with help, you know. Like, I'm just getting started, so I can't afford a bunch to pay staff and everything. But look, if you and I could partner, then you could help me, you know, find the poor and identify legitimate families that we can help. And then I can hopefully raise money and we'll start building houses. And that's what we've done. And so I guess kind of bring this back around. almost everything I've done in my life the last 35 years has been a result of some network connection to a friend or some weird thing, kind of like our meeting.
Yeah.
And then things just go from there. And it's been really, really fun. I love what I do. I got the best job in the world.
Let's come back to that for a second, because what do you do? I mean, for me, I break out in a cold sweat if somebody asks me to change a light bulb or change a plug, and I have to look it up on YouTube, and usually then it involves some accident along the way. It's really a talent that I don't have. So I'm always in awe of people who do things like build houses. For me, there is nothing more manly than going out into the wilderness and building a house. And I wish I could be that guy. And I'm so, in my imagination, far away I am, but I would never try to do something like that because I would fail in the most abjectly embarrassing way possible. So I assume that you must have some training, right? Were you a house builder before? How did you get into this?
Yeah. Well, over the years, my wife and I have owned quite a few homes and flipped houses and done things like that. But that's not what we do for a career or anything. I've just always been one of those individuals that just said, well, let's just do it, and I'm kind of a ready, fire, aim guy, like let's just tackle it, and then we'll figure it out, and we'll find the right people. And thank God, over the course of different projects, those people do emerge. I'm kind of more the guy that just says, well, anything can be done, and let's figure it out. And so, for example, for one period of my life, I worked with professional and amateur surfers all over the world for 10 years. I've never surfed a day in my life. But through a series of events, I started an international organization that now continues to exist, training surfers how to be missionaries in the world, right? I have a Christian organization, right, and do all this. And I didn't know anybody in surfing. I just said, well, it's too long of a story,
No, okay, we better not go into the surfing angle. But
yeah. So in the case of the coffee thing, I do it different than I build the homes on the island of Roatan. Mm-hmm. In Roatan, I seek out groups who fund the houses and then go down and build the houses. And so it's a process where groups of people are involved at a very, hands-on level, raising the funds, getting to know the family, going down and being with the family for a week or two, building the house, and it's an amazing experience for everybody. Absolutely life-changing. The coffee thing is a little different at this stage in that the logistics of trying to get groups up into the mountains to build homes in environments that are very difficult. Like you can see behind me, almost every farm is on a mountainside. Right. And getting wood up to where that house is, you literally have to carry it maybe a mile back in there. And so the logistics of that are more difficult. So I'm relying on local labor, local materials, locally sourced materials, which down there is adobe block, just mud blocks, they'll last for 50, 60 years or whatever if they're stuccoed and treated properly. Anyway, so right now what I'm trying to do is find individuals who will help fund a house, and basically in their name I oversee maybe a general contractor would. I network with local finca owners or people down there who will actually on site make sure that the house gets built. Right. I go down and visit on a regular basis to make sure that that's happening. And we have Zoom calls and technology.
Well, I'd just like to take that back a bit because it's an area when I was thinking about this that I had some questions on. I wanted to understand more about. So I started to think through the practicalities of it. Didn't think through about the wood, carrying the wood. And it's interesting. You're right. Having materials locally, and I say locally, can mean like oftentimes within a few hundred meters is actually makes a difference, right? But what I was thinking was there's going to be some stupid questions. But first of all, don't they have houses? It was my first thought. I mean, but presumably they have very poor quality housing. and
Yeah.
maybe there's hygienic issues. So I had questions over um, what's the current position of people at the moment, and what do you end up providing them with? Is it do you have a like a template where it's 1 room, 2 rooms, more depending on the size of the family? Do you build infrastructure around it? I mean, is there a well? Do you drill the wells? Tell us a little bit about the practicalities of what you actually do.
Yeah. Well, these people that we're helping, for the most part, live very remotely, as you can see in the picture. And so they have, depending upon what the government has put in, they have water within walking distance of some kind. It might just be an artesian well coming out of the hillside. Yeah, in some cases, the government has, where there's an artesian well, put in a large holding tank with lines that might go for a long, long ways, a 1-inch line or something that will at least service water down to certain areas. So
Right.
so the homes that we provide are typically where people are already living, but just in very bad conditions.
Got
Right.
you.
So I'm going to share my screen with you and show you an example. You've got just you have a screen sharing disabled. You'll have to enable
Oh
that in order
God.
to
Oh,
be able
now
to do
you've
it.
put me on the spot with
It's
having to
probably
be
under.
technically competent, Tom. This is a mistake. Hold on. Okay. Okay, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Here we go. How about now?
Good. Let's see here. Just share. Can you see that photo
Not yet.
of the family?
Not yet.
What it is a picture of a family standing in their house. You can see that it's just kind of slats and sticks in a dirt floor. And so that's pretty typical of a Lenca Indian home. And it's obviously not a place that it's just a step. Well, in the United States, we would be arrested for putting a horse inside of this building, right?
Right.
This is how people are living. And so there's health issues, there's dignity issues, which is the biggest deal that impacts me and motivates me. The people who live like animals feel subhuman, and in their own mind, they are subhuman. And so there's all kinds of ramifications to that. And being poor is just a total bummer. I've lived and traveled enough to know that just being on lockdown in the States for 2 months is a bummer. You get some sense of what it's like to be poor. You don't get to travel, you don't get to do things while the rest of the world does, when you're poor. And
Yeah.
and so it's very dehumanizing to have, and demotivating, and health issues, education issues, when you live like an animal. And so I go into an environment like that, meet a family, and I'm really motivated to help them move out of that stage into a better place. Now, the picture of the family that I'm showing you, the mom, the dad, and all 2 or 3 kids, I can't see it behind the screen now, they all work, and they all pick coffee. They have to, because they'll pick coffee all harvest season, and that money that they'll earn will only last them 2 or 3 months beyond that, and they have no income whatsoever. And so the poverty at the level of where the coffee is picked by the agricultural worker is, I don't want to go into whether it's just or not just. It's just not providing a living in any sense of the word.
Yeah.
And so when people realize where their cup of coffee comes from, I think most people would be motivated to want to help those at the bottom of the chain, to at least be able to live like a human being. And so that's my whole thing about housing in general. I have this crazy long story that I won't take all the time to tell, but at one time I was homeless, and my wife and my 4 kids. And a person came into my life who changed my life completely by providing a home for our family. And I went from having no money to now I have a lot of money. And it's because this person changed the trajectory of my life by providing a home for my family debt-free, and the guy that did it said, look, in 2 years, we have a law in the United States. If you sell your house after 2 years, you can take the capital, there's no capital gains, up to $500,000, right?
Right.
So it's tax-free income, $500,000. This guy says, you sell your house in 2 years, and the two of us will build you another one with what we make. Well, several houses later, this guy, I've now, property in Tucson, Flagstaff, condos, custom homes I've lived in, built in. It's ridiculous how this guy changed my life, right?
Yeah.
So part of me, half the reason I do what I do is because I'm paying it forward. It's like, look, I now want to provide for other poor people what I was provided. And so my goal is to provide thousands of houses, and until I die, as many as I can, right?
And can I just say something,
so
Tom,
anyway.
which is, I want to, this is such an important point, and thank you for sharing that story with us too, because it is personal. And there's a few points I want to pick up on there where you said the first thing is about poverty. The first time that I understood poverty was in my 20s. And I remember it was in Jakarta. I remember the exact moment. The penny dropped for me. It was in Jakarta. This is a long time ago because in my 20s was a while back. And I saw a young, I'm going to say 9-year-old, I don't know how old he was, standing in the motorway in between speeding cars, waiting for traffic jams to run up and try and sell bottles of water. And I was sitting in a fancy car, and I said to the driver, why doesn't he sell that water somewhere safer? Like, I can't remember the exact question I asked, but it was like, why is he doing this? And he looked at me like, well, he has to eat. And it suddenly came home to me just that minute that we think we understand poverty, but we understand it at a logical level. But until you really come face to face with it, and this boy came up to my window, and he was only a foot away from my face. And I saw and I can still remember what he looked like. And it had such an impact on me that I suddenly realized that poverty wasn't a statistic. It wasn't something that happens to other people. I'm not special. I'm just lucky where I was born. All these sorts of emotions came over me. Anyway, just sort of moving on to another point that you picked up on. It was talking about doing this for the coffee farmers and the dignity that comes with owning a house or having something and paying it forward and the work that you're doing, the reason you're doing these things. I want to bring this back into really talking about the program and getting some help in terms of exposure and selflessly or selfishly, I want to talk about what's in it for the other people. And you'll have your own thing to say, but I want to say something, and that's this. So I got involved in a charity many years ago where I was trying to give some money to orphans. That was my thing, orphan kids. And we had been giving money to charities and not really feeling as though we were achieving anything. So we wanted to try to give it directly. And I ended up finding an orphanage in Bucharest. And I flew out there and I met the people and I met the boys. It was one guy called Darius, he's a Polish guy, who was running a house of kids that he'd raised since they were children, since they were babies. And had raised them all, and he just needed some money to help keep the household running and get them integrated into society. They were all growing up now. They were sort of 16 and 15 and 18 and this sort of age. And I met them. And being on the ground and meeting these people, and then we gave them money every month for about a year and a half. And I would get letters from them and cards, and I can't begin to tell you the complete chasm of difference it makes when you have direct involvement from having a direct debit that goes out each month. And so bringing this around to what you do, one of the things that you do is you don't just take people's money and say, I'll go build a house. You say, come over and get involved with the project in some capacity. Come over and see what it is that you're doing. Have an experience.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I learned a long time ago that if I wanted people to be involved, that people had to experience some of the things that I experience and have motivated me to do what I do. And so I find different ways throughout the last 35 years to do that. And with the coffee thing in particular, what I'm doing is coffee tourism, so coffee tours. And so my thing is like, look, I know if I can bring people to see what I see and introduce them to the coffee world of the highlands of Honduras, that they too will be educated about coffee from the plant, to their cup, and meet amazingly cool people and see things that are really cool. The highlands of Honduras, as you can see behind me, are awesome. And I mean,
That's amazing.
I've traveled to a lot of places, and it's very, very pretty, right? Climate's perfect, right? Anyway, so they see things, they get educated, they meet all the people in the chain that links all this together to make the product of a home ultimately, and they're educated and all that, inspired, and they're challenged. I'll hike them back to that house right there behind me to meet that family, blow their mind, right? And it's awesome. And it's, believe me, that's in the middle of nowhere, man. The first time I hiked to it, I was like, whoa, this is what's happening, but it was cool. Anyway, they meet the family and the kids, and they hear a little bit about they drink a little bit of this corn liquor stuff that they drink. It's local only,
Right.
Anyway, they have an amazing experience. They have tamales or whatever we have for lunch, so
are
anyway,
you saying, Tom, that you get them drunk and they write a check? Is that what you're saying?
that's the strategy, yeah. So I do these coffee tours. I think I've sent you pictures and things of that
amazing.
are just really cool. Some of the people that you meet, and the people, I can't believe I thought I was gonna only meet a bunch of uneducated, dumb farmers, whatever that is, Man, these are like really quality, interesting people. I mean, so anyway, and entrepreneurial restaurant owners, and that's quite a thing they got going out there, And so I just learned a long time ago that I have to expose people, and it's a principle. And I think I even shared a scripture with you about that, how, and I'm not going to start preaching or anything, but the general idea is that when Jesus went from town to town and healed people, it said first he was moved from compassion by what he saw to action. Okay, and then he turned to his disciples and said, look, the harvest is ripe, or the need is great, but the workers are few. And so the principle is, if you take people out to see things, if they have a heart at all, compassion will come up into their heart. They will be moved to do something from what they have seen. And so I know the need, the important need of actually getting people on site to see it. And now I've run 3 or 4 of these, and they know going in, look, I'm gonna educate you, inspire you. We're gonna have a blast. Weird things are gonna happen that I can't predict, because this is not Seattle, or whatever. This is a whole other culture. Back on Roatan, just the I deal with narcos, mafia, politicians who happen to be narco and mafia.
Yeah, they're worse than the narco and the mafia, right?
It's not dangerous. In fact, where we go, Marcala, Esperanza, San Andres, that area of Honduras is almost zero crime. It is one of the safest places you could go, and it's very, very safe. So anyway, and there's no narco trafficking, and I actually believe the people that are telling me that. So anyway, it's a cool place. So by showing them, introducing them to the people I see and know, confidence is also instilled in people. Like, these are really good people running this, and there's a house going up, and anyway, I make sure they meet a family that we vetted for a home in case they want to go ahead and initiate a
Right.
house
And
visit.
can I just ask on that point? It was one of my questions. Can I ask, how do you pick a family? It must be quite tough to choose one over another.
Yes, because there's an endless supply of people that need those homes, right?
Right.
And you want to help everyone. In fact, after the interview, I'm like, look, if I could, I would start your home today. But that's not how it works. I have to go tell your story, and we all have to pray together that somehow someone's heart will be touched to help you. And so it's happened 130 times on Roatan. I know it can happen. So let's just move forward with the process. Okay, so there are some criteria. Number one, they have to have land that is in their name, right?
Right.
And culturally, that means different things in different places in your name. We're used to certain documents and things. And when you're dealing with a tribal group like Lenkas,
there may not be a cadastre.
Establishment of what's yours.
It might be who's vouched for you, right? Someone has to vouch for you. Yes, that's his land. Is it his land? Yes, it's his land. Actually, it's his brother's land, but his brother says it's okay. That kind of thing, right?
Exactly. Or it's typically parents' land who have then said, this portion over here's for you, and that portion's for you, and they, it's between that tree and that rock, and
right.
So we establish as closely culturally as we can that this is their land, because we don't want to build a house that is just going to immediately be taken away from them because it's the nicest house in the entire mountain, right? So we, establishing whose land it is big. And then we interview people, tell us your story, tell us about your kids, tell us about what you do, give your family history. And dude, some of them are unprintable, tragically sad, involves incest and rape and things you just don't put out on the internet, but you say, like they had 3 kids, does that. Anyway, we, as best we can, we have a bio on each family. And then another important thing is that we have a connection to them who's going to be the overseer of the money of the build of the house, right? So I go to a finca owner and say, you have 40 people that work here in the harvest. Your people, they've been here for 10, 15, 20 years. Can you point me to the neediest families that you can vouch for, and you would be willing to handle this money and oversee the build? Most of these finca owners, they have a background of, building things and doing different things in the development of their farm, right? So they know who to hire to make the adobe brick, who to do this. And they're like, most of them are locally, like, look, I love.
People locally are usually, I haven't worked in South America. I haven't been in South America, but I've done things out in Eastern Europe. And I'm always amazed by the competency and capabilities of local people. They may not have had any training, but together the village will know how to build a house. The village will know how to dig a well. The village will know how to make a school, right?
Yes, exactly. And they don't need some gringo, they call, a guy from they don't need some gringo telling them what the house should look like or what materials it should be made of, or there's a lot of things that I'm just like, look, these guys know what they're doing. I trust you. We come up with a house design together that's locally appropriate, culturally appropriate, within the context of a budget, and say, okay, let's do it. And typically, the houses that we build are some of the nicest around the area as a result, because we don't have the financial constraints that the local farmer has. He has to build his stick house first, and then 20 years later he might have a adobe block house. We come in and can make it happen because of the finances that are donated. Anyway, so I think I'm not kind of losing track of where I was.
So we were talking about, we started off by talking about how do you choose the family, and you were talking through the steps that you went through, almost like the due diligence. So it started off with, that they would vouch for somebody who was the most needy, that he's willing to vouch for. and then you check the land ownership and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yes, and so I at this stage I've got 3 people in 3 different areas. San Andres is a town and area.
Yeah.
Esperanza Intibucá, which is another area, and Marcala. Marcala is actually quite a famous coffee place. I think they won Cup of the Year or something last year. Some award.
Uh-huh.
They're very exotic coffees. And so I have 3 guys, and they represent between those 3 farms. Husbands and wives are a team too, very much so, in their business, which is their finca.
Uh-huh.
And so that represents maybe 30 or 40 houses that could be built. Right now I've got 2 houses going of 30 or 40 that could be being built. And so I've talked with all of them. They all are part of a co-op of some kind. So the typical finca in Honduras is like behind me. It's one processing plant called Comsa in Marcala represents 1,500 farms, right? I'm working with one farmer of 1,500 farms in that area. And I've said, Melhelm, look, when this thing ramps up and Starbucks wants to do 200 houses, what can we do? We at the appropriate time, I need you to introduce me to the farmers of Comsa and scale this thing. And so right now we need proof of concept. So let's get a house built on your finca, one of your finca farm workers. And so that's what we're doing. But when this scales, we need to be ready to expand. Each one of those locations has multiple processing plants that might represent, just a lot of farms, right? And that's, I think, different than some other. I understand that Brazil is more corporate. In Latin America, Central America, Mexico has a lot of individual owner farms versus corporate farms. And so the dynamic works really well in Central America and in Mexico. It'll be interesting as we expand into the future. I want this to be global, right?
Well, that would be amazing. That would be amazing, because the issue of farmer poverty and in particular, of course, we're talking about coffee farmers, isn't restricted to one location. It's global, and there's many reasons for that. And oftentimes those reasons are misunderstood. But there's many reasons. It's a complex problem. But I think there's a few practical solutions that can be done, and what you're doing, it doesn't need to change everything, right? And this is one of the things that people have to reconcile. You don't need to say it's all or nothing. I have to change every farmer's life, or what's the point? Each person's life is a huge thing. And you're an example of that, because you're just one person. But that change that happened to you, that person who intervened and helped you at that particular point in time when you needed it, now was a catalyst for you going on and doing all these other things. So one person actually does make a difference. Yeah. And we've got to deal one person at a time. I'd like to move, because I know I'm very conscious of time. I'd like to just ask, one of my questions was very much around the profile of the typical kind of person who comes out and gets involved in your projects. Are they coming from a coffee background? Are they coffee roasters who want to do it ethically, but also think it's going to be a good marketing a theme for them, which is absolutely fine? What kind of profile is it?
At this stage, let me see generally that generous people do generous things. And fortunately, I have a tribe of 10,000 people that have been with me over 35 years of doing projects all over, who are extremely generous people. Probably the vast majority of them are coffee drinkers, but that's not what motivated them initially to get involved in the coffee project now with me. Right. Not that 10,000 are, they aren't. The 4 tours I've taken have been made up of people that, for the most part, I already know, and I'm just introducing them to a new thing. They're like, Tom, oh, I know we did this other thing in this country and this thing in that country, and what are you into now? Bring me along, So I bring them along, and they're generous people, so they do generous things. I'm wanting to break into the coffee world, whatever that is. So far, I have not had, I don't think, specifically a coffee motivated donor. It just that is
Wow.
the coffee world.
Okay.
I'm breaking into that. These kinds of interviews help me to do that, to get me introduced. But what I'm hoping is either from the individual level of a generous person who cares about other human beings.
Yeah.
I want to motivate them. I've had people I have met on airplanes that have made $35,000 checks. More than one.
Wow.
I've had people that I don't know by just telling my story like this. I told one guy a story on an airplane about another guy who gave me, over the last few years, that I didn't know this guy at all, 100,000, more than that, more money than that. Of course, we're great friends now, right? I'm telling this story to a guy next to me on a plane, and as we get up to leave, he says to me, Tom, I want to have a story like that. I want to have a story like that. So I'm going to go home. This guy lives in Tucson, Arizona, which is not what it is, what it is. And he's a dentist. But I don't know where he got his money, but he owned a couple of polo teams and the horses, pays the play. I mean, the guy's got a lot of money. And he says, Tom, I'm going to go home and I'm going to sell my best polo horse, and I'm going to send you the money. I'm like, awesome, dude. I mean, I hear that kind of stuff from people all the time. I didn't really know if I believed them or not. I just like, great. Yeah. 2 weeks later, I get a $35,000 check from this guy. Well, needless to say, amazing. We are best friends. Years.
Yeah. You've got a lot of best friends, Tom.
Well, I've taken him on tours all over the different countries, showing him what I do. And so I've taken these, especially these two guys I'm telling you about, I've taken them back on my dime and said, look, thank you. This is what you've done. This is what we've done together. And, riding back on a boat from a remote island, the guy says to me, do you need more money? And I'm like, dude, I always need more money. I've always got, and so they just, generous people do generous things.
And can I tell you also that I'd like to say that when you accumulate things and you buy things, whether it's a car or a horse, there's a certain amount of pleasure you derive from the thing. But 5 and 10 years later, you look back and you forgot about the thing. And maybe you have some kind of nice-ish memories, but they're nothing compared to the experiences you remember. And you never sit in a bar and say, over a whiskey, I remember that BMW I had. Oh, what a beauty, and blah, blah. No. No one's bored. No one wants to hear about that. You talk about the time that you were in Japan and you were doing this and you ended up without your clothes on or whatever it was. Or you talk about the time that you did a trip all across South America and you ended up meeting these people and you got drunk with this guy called Tom who fed you this moonshine and you woke up and all the hair had come off your legs. And, that's the stories that you talk about, right? That's what you remember. That's what you're buying.
Those are fun. Those are fun. Well, and I think that's something that I can uniquely do that other charities maybe can't do, is that I can really connect people with a family initially either through a tour and meeting the family or through bios. And then I can involve them beyond giving money into integration into the family's life. So for example, we maybe can't build the house from start to finish together on site, but I can have you down for 2, 3, 4 days, whatever you can afford to get away. And we can paint the house together with the family and spend 2 or 3 days together. And I guarantee you'll be friends for life. And now, as weird as it is, the guy in that house behind me probably has a cell phone. anybody to have a Facebook page. You're just like, what? And so you literally can FaceTime together and
Yeah.
whatever, message together and stay involved. You may, after the building of the house, you might want to sponsor those kids $10 a month and put them through school and give them
And
a
what an
whole new life.
experience that is. What an experience that is, and how that feels. And to us, we think $10 a month, it's not a lot for most of us.
Yeah.
But you're putting that kid through school.
Yeah.
And then you get pictures of their pack and their pencils. And let me tell you something, their pencils, they got a pencil for some people, that's a precious object. And they will write that pencil. They will treasure that pencil. They will write it right down until they got the little nub. It means a lot to them.
Yeah. Our sharing our little bits or whatever, is amazing what it can accomplish in a family's life. And because of technology today, the accountability of where money goes and how it's spent, like I literally can almost on a daily basis send a donor, here's the Adobe block being made. Here it is being delivered. Here it is going, here's the foundation rocks. Yeah, I mean, come on, we can connect a person directly to watch the whole thing go up and even show them the receipts of how things are spent. I mean, I
think that's an important point. And it was actually one of the reasons why I didn't want to, going back to the orphanage story, I didn't want us to send money. Frankly, I didn't trust anybody with it. I didn't trust how much was actually going to reach. And when you talk about poor regions, the problem is that and you mentioned the crooked mafia and the politicians. In my experience, the politicians are worse than the mafia. At least the mafia in a lot of places do what they say they're going to do. The politicians, in a way, you often have to go through many layers, right?
Yeah.
And that money starts here and has to work all its way through those layers. How much ends up where it needs to go? Yeah. So direct involvement, direct action, and direct involvement is the way to circumvent all of those problems. And to do it and combine it with an experience. I'm going to take this all the way back. This is an amazing segue. You're going to be proud of me. To when we talked on LinkedIn, when I read your message on LinkedIn, and I thought that's a way to directly help and to do it in a way that is selfless, but we're all a little selfish. We all want to get something out of it as well. And this is a benefit that people will keep with them, an experience people keep them for the whole of their lives. And so I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and talking to me about it and sharing your story. What I'm going to do, Tom, I'm going to take the pictures you sent me. I'm going to assemble some kind of web page, and I'm going to make sure your details are on there. So we'll check that with you, and people can reach out and they can just get in contact with you and find out all the information that they need, right?
Sure, yeah. Tom@dwellingsnow.com is my email address. Dwellingsnow.com is the website. And I will be all over it if people are interested. This is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to retire. I'm just going to do this till I die. And
beautiful.
I love what I'm doing. I can't. I'm dying.
Very evident, I think.
Oh man, I want to be out on an adventure, right?
Yeah.
And taking people with me. So I'm anxious for this thing to go over with, so I can get back down there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tom. We'll have all the details in there, and it's been a real pleasure. I can say it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
Nick, I know this may not make the cut, but we have involvement from an individual level donor, just like, wow, that's cool. I want to give $10, whatever, X amount.
Yeah.
To a corporate sponsorship of $500,000 or something. And we basically brand all of these bills in the name of your company, not the name of our organization. And so I don't care who, it's just like, let's get some poor people a home. And I want to draw attention to our name, Dwellings, or that's the U.S. corporation, nonprofit corporation is Dwellings. And in Spanish, we're now working through our nonprofit corporation in Honduras called Viviendas Dignas, which means dignified housing. And so we're trying to move people from having to live like an animal into something that brings dignity and humanity to people. We're starting with coffee, but it really goes into the entire ag world. Next, I think, because I think there's a corporate world that might be able to be mobilized, is we're going to go eventually into cacao and any other product that is agricultural, because it's the agricultural workers of the world worldwide that really are some of the poorest in the world, and yet
Absolutely.
still have things like intact families and different things like that, that we can help entire families and really make a difference in a family, a community, and then, you know, in a country, right? So whatever, the world.
Well, there's a lot of work ahead of us, Tom, and hopefully this will hopefully this will get us started somewhere. I look forward to maybe talking with you again and staying in touch. Tom, thank you so much for your time, mate.